Okay, hello everyone. Wow, it's amazing to see so many people here who are honoring us. So first of all, thank you for coming here. We will begin in a few seconds, and I hope everybody got their seats and everybody's settled. And if you have some sort of a problem, we have our team walking around here and they can help you out. Ministers, Parliament members, the former Prime Minister and head of the opposition, MK Yair Lapid, who will join us soon, members of parliaments around the world, testimonial barriers, experts, dearest families of the hostages, and distinguished guests. I am truly humbled and honored to have all of you here with us today at this no less than historical event. Both Elnet, who are my partners in organizing this important event, and myself, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. As an Israeli woman, a Jewish woman, a member of Knesset, but first and foremost as a mother of two daughters, I am here today to make sure they and all women of the world will have a safe future. Women are the biggest tribe on earth, and it is my duty and privilege to be an advocate for them. We are declaring today the establishment of an important and historical coalition of acknowledging sexual assaults as a crime of war. I do not speak of the legal definition only, since the international law has already acknowledged it as a war crime. It is also a cultural and political perception that we need to change on this subject. Sexual violence towards women, men, and children appears in various conflict areas all over the world. We hear testimonies of these crimes happening in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, and in the Middle East. On October 7th, we have experienced these crimes in the most horrific way imaginable here in Israel. For the 128 hostages, and especially the 17 women who are still held in Gaza, this reality is going on now for 227 days. No woman anywhere in the world should fear sexual violence, especially not in a military armed conflict, no matter which country she comes from or what God she believes in. These war crimes have no place in our world. The events of October 7th have resonated in the whole world, but in too many places, the atrocities committed by Hamas have been put aside. And even in Western liberal countries, the subject has been forgotten, and soon there appeared by protesters the slogan, "Rape is resistance." This slogan should not worry only women in Israel or Jewish women around the world. This is a message that for a growing population around the world, the use of sexual violence as a war weapon is legitimate. In many places, we have witnessed an even worse phenomena of the complete denial of the horrors that have taken place on October 7th and after. I would like to use this important forum to address the many women who returned from Hamas captivity 5 months ago. Some of these women have bravely exposed the different places and times, including here in Parliament, the horrific sexual violence they experienced or witnessed while they were in captivity. You are all brave heroes exposing to the world the atrocities that are taking place, even at this very moment, by Hamas terrorists. I salute you. Your voices are heard loud and clear. We are here today to say no more. No more to these sites that have been normalized through the years. No more forgiveness for any sexual violence. We should stand together as a united front against this old new form of terror that we are witnessing. Together we can create active and effective measures in state legislation, as well as changes in the global arena. I thank all who came here today, women, men, ministers, members of parliaments, ambassadors, journalists, families. who have decided to fight this horrific method of terror. Sexual violence is not only a tool of war, sexual violence is a crime of war. We should act together as a liberal Western coalition for the world to acknowledge this fact. From this forum, I call other countries in the world, as well as international and civil organizations, to join us. Hannah Arendt, the Jewish writer and philosopher, who was prosecuted by the Nazis, said, "The right words we find at the right time are those of action." These are days we are demanded to act the right actions. It is our moral obligation to do so for a better world. As a mother of 2 daughters, I know this is the right thing to do for a better future for us and for our children. I would like to thank the Elnet organization for cooperating with us for many months to bring to the world the call to acknowledge the war crimes of Hamas. Without their cooperation, the important coalition that we see here forming today would not have come to life. Thank you for your work for the State of Israel, for the hostages, and for a better future for women around the world. Thank you, Emmanuel Navon. Thank you, Yossi Abarvanel. And thank you, Binyamin Tueti, and the entire team for all your work. One last word, and maybe the most important one. Romy, Doron, Arbel, Noah, Carmel, Karina, Naama, Daniela, Agam, Emily, Eden, Shiri, Liri, Judy, Inbar, Mia, ve'Ofra. This event is dedicated to you. You are all in our hearts every single moment of every single day. And we promise to continue being your voice and not to let go until all of you are back home with us. Amen. Thank you very much. Since this event is so important and we have so many speakers, let me just ask that everybody keeps within their timeline. We have a limited time and a lot of speakers, so please try to do your best to be on time. And I want to introduce Yossi Abarvanel from Elnet, who is the Deputy Executive Director of Elnet. Thank you for being with me, and he will be my co-host. And we will begin with our speakers. I would like to ask Dr. Emmanuel Navon, the CEO of Elnet Israel, International Relations expert at Tel Aviv University, to speak. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Member of Knesset Shali Tal Meron, for this introduction and for co-hosting this event with Elnet. I would also like to salute the presence of the other members of Knesset on this panel who've joined us, as well as the Elnet team, as well as my colleague also, the Executive Director of Elnet in Eastern and Central Europe, Marta Kubica, who was also instrumental in organizing this event, as well, of course, as some of the board members of Elnet Israel who are here with us today, and, of course, the diplomatic corps, the ambassadors, and, of course, the members of the delegation, the different members who came from Europe, and the families of the victims and of the hostages. Since October 7, Elnet has been active in presenting to European leaders the atrocities that were committed on that day. We've brought to Israel hundreds of opinion leaders and opinion makers, of members of parliament to Israel to visit the South. We've also sent to Europe many Israeli leaders, including MK Shali Tal Meron, who explained in Europe the issue of sexual crime as a crime recognized by international law that should be recognized. And we're very glad today that this initiative from a member of Knesset Tal Meron, together with Minister Aurore Berger, who will address us shortly, the French Minister of Gender Equality, it brought together this event. I think we need to understand that in order to defend women and to fight against sexual crimes, we need to have a coalition, an international coalition, but that has to be based on free countries. I think we don't have very high expectations from autocracies around the world, and that's where we're starting, at least with European countries. And I think there is a need to adapt and change the status of Rome that established the International Criminal Court, which recognizes sexual crimes as a crime against humanity, but only when it is perpetrated in the framework of a war and not in the framework of a terrorist attack, which was the case, of course, on October 7th. So I look forward to cooperating with partners in Europe and in the free world in order to fight this crime and to make it an international recognized crime, even in the framework of a terrorist attack. So thank you again for your cooperation, and I look forward to a very successful day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You know, during my travels in Europe, together with Elnet, we've visited many countries. We visited Poland and Berlin and Paris and Rome, and I visited Geneva, and I spoke about these issues to different parliaments around the world. And when I met the Minister for Gender Equality in France, Mrs. Aurore Berger, who you will hear in a second, she was the first woman to recognize the need for this coalition, and she is cooperating together with us to create this important coalition. And I want to thank her, her entire team, and of course the Elnet team in Paris for working so hard to make this happen. And unfortunately, she could not join us today because she has legislation in her parliament, but she prepared a video for us. So let me just say that I thank Minister Aurore Berger, Minister for Gender Equality and the Fight Against Discrimination, for her greetings on this video. Please.
Madame la députée, chère Chélie Talmeron, Monsieur le directeur général d'Elnet, Emmanuel Navon, Mesdames et Messieurs, je suis heureuse de participer, même si c'est à distance, à cette conférence que vous organisez aujourd'hui à la Knesset, parce qu'elle offre un espace essentiel d'échange, de dialogue, qui doit permettre, je le crois, de briser des tabous et de mettre enfin des mots sur des violences que beaucoup préfèrent ne pas nommer. Je salue aussi cette initiative qui doit participer plus largement à une prise de conscience collective sur les violences que subissent les femmes, notamment dans les zones de conflit. L'attaque terroriste que vous avez subie en Israël, qui reste particulièrement marquée aussi pour notre pays, avec 43 Français qui y ont perdu la vie, elle provoque une onde de choc à travers le monde. La France, à travers la voix du président de la République, a rappelé évidemment son soutien à Israël, son droit et sa légitimité à exister, son droit à se défendre dans le respect du droit international. Et on le sait, le 7 octobre dernier, les femmes, elles ont été aussi les premières cibles des attaques terroristes du Hamas. Et face à cela, notre action internationale, elle ne doit évidemment pas faiblir. Dès le mois de novembre 2023, la ministre à l'époque des Affaires étrangères et de l'Europe, Catherine Colonna, elle avait immédiatement parlé des violences sexuelles commises qui devaient être universellement reconnues et fermement condamnées, et leurs auteurs sévèrement punis. Je pense aussi, au moment où je vous parle, aux otages qui sont encore détenus par le Hamas, qui subissent leurs violences, et en particulier, vous me le permettrez, aux 3 otages français. Nous devons donc continuer collectivement ce combat contre ce fléau qui s'abat, et qui s'abat encore plus spécifiquement sur les femmes qui sont toujours les premières victimes de la barbarie et du terror. Et c'est pour cela que nous avons annoncé que la France soutiendrait à hauteur de 200 000 € l'association des centres de réponse aux victimes de viols en Israël, qui accomplit un travail exceptionnel depuis plus de 30 ans et qui, bien entendu, et malheureusement surtout, a vu son travail être largement augmenté depuis le 7 octobre. Nous serons à vos côtés pour faire la lumière sur ce qui s'est passé, parce que c'est ce que nous devons tout simplement aux femmes, aux victimes, à leurs familles, à leurs proches et à toute la société israélienne. Personne ne peut non plus oublier les viols commis par les troupes russes en Ukraine. Ces crimes-là non plus ne doivent pas rester impunis. Et la France, elle continue à donner un appui concret aux enquêtes et aux travaux de la Cour pénale internationale. Nous continuons aussi, vous le savez, à soutenir le fonds créé par le docteur Mukwege, qui aujourd'hui soutient aussi bien les survivantes, qu'elles soient en Ukraine, qu'elles soient en RDC, qu'elles soient en RCA, qu'elles soient en Irak, partout dans le monde où elles ont besoin évidemment de notre appui. Nous devons donc continuer collectivement à nous mobiliser pour alerter, pour signaler, pour protéger, pour défendre les femmes à travers le monde, pour garantir la justice tout simplement, le respect du droit international dans toutes les zones de conflit et assurer partout le respect des droits des femmes. Le 7 octobre a eu lieu le plus grand massacre de juifs depuis la fin de la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Nous ne pouvons donc évidemment pas l'oublier, et nous ne pouvons pas passer sous silence non plus la vague d'antisémitisme qui malheureusement s'est répandue à travers le monde et que nous condamnons avec la plus grande fermeté ici dans notre pays. Vous le savez, vous pouvez compter sur la détermination de la France, sur ma détermination personnelle pour combattre ce fléau de l'antisémitisme qu'on voit malheureusement ressurgir. Et je sais aussi pouvoir compter sur vous, sur vos échanges, sur ce que vous vous direz aujourd'hui, pour faire en sorte tout simplement que ce qui s'est produit ne soit jamais oublié et surtout qu'on donne la parole à ces femmes survivantes parfois, à leurs familles, aux témoins, aux médecins qui sont intervenus, aux forces de l'ordre, à l'armée, parce que nous devons comprendre ce qui s'est passé, nous devons le faire entendre à travers le monde pour que ces femmes tout simplement soient reconnues pour malheureusement ce qu'elles ont eu à traverser et à subir, parce que quand on est féministe, ce qui est mon cas en tant que ministre de l'égalité entre les femmes et les hommes, on ne choisit ni ses victimes ni ses bourreaux, et nous devons partout ne rien laisser passer. Alors je vous envoie un message d'amitié, d'empathie, en particulier encore une fois aux femmes victimes et à leurs familles. Et je vous dis à très bientôt et je vous remercie pour votre engagement.
Thank you so much again for the Minister for Gender Equality in France, Mrs. Aurore Berger. Please.
Okay, we will now hear greetings by Prime Minister Manuel Valls, former Prime Minister of France. When we told him about the idea of the coalition, he insisted to give a statement, so you will hear him right now. Please.
Je veux saluer votre belle initiative, cette conférence qui se tient à la Knesset, à Jérusalem, afin de mettre en place une grande coalition internationale contre les violences faites aux femmes, les violences sexuelles, les viols utilisés comme armes de guerre. Nous l'avons vu en Afrique, notamment au Congo, au Levant, cette pratique utilisée par Daesh, par l'État islamique, en Ukraine, ces violences sexuelles, ces viols, ces humiliations commis par les troupes russes de Vladimir Poutine, et évidemment en Israël, le 7 octobre dernier, le Hamas utilisant aussi cette arme de guerre pour terroriser et humilier ces femmes violées, martyrisées, parce qu'israéliennes, parce que juives. D'ailleurs, nous aurions pu espérer une plus grande indignation face à ce féminicide, face à ces exactions épouvantables de la part des organisations internationales et notamment d'une partie du mouvement féministe resté trop silencieux. Mais vous avez raison, il faut se battre et il faut que les organisations internationales, les grandes nations démocratiques, les grandes ONG, les associations se mobilisent. Et votre rendez-vous est une première étape indispensable. Une nouvelle fois, vous pouvez compter sur mon soutien et mon engagement. Plein succès, car cette journée sera, je n'en doute pas, historique pour un pas supplémentaire pour protéger les femmes, pour protéger leur dignité et pour dénoncer évidemment ces crimes qui devront être traduits devant la justice. Belle journée à vous.
I would like now to give the floor to Minister Karin Prien, State Minister of Education of Schleswig-Holstein in Germany. Madam Minister, can you hear us? She's joining by Zoom. Can we unmute the Minister, please?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we do. Welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Okay. Well, dear Shelley Talmeron, dear Emmanuel Navon, dear ministers, members of parliament of the Knesset, ladies and gentlemen, I very much regret not being in Jerusalem today. But first of all, I want to thank you for organizing this so important meeting and for your tireless commitment against gender-based violence as a weapon of war. Through history and unfortunately till today, women have been disproportionately targeted in conflicts. It is important to understand that the use of sexualized violence as a weapon of war does not only concern women. feminists or activists. This topic needs its place in the current discourse in peace and conflict studies. It needs to be discussed in the media, at university, and in talk shows. This is a human rights issue and a matter of preserving peace and dignity. We see gender-based violence happening currently in Ukraine, where women are enduring horrific gender-based violence as part of the ongoing aggression from Russia. We witnessed it in Iraq and in Syria, where Yazidi women were enslaved and abused by ISIS. We saw it in Israel on October 7th, where Hamas committed heinous acts of violence against women. These are not isolated incidents, but part of a systematic strategy of terror worldwide. Perpetrators use such violence as a deliberate strategy to demoralize the civilian population, undermine social cohesion, destroy family units, create long-lasting psychological trauma, and instill fear. The resulting social disruption weakens the community's ability to resist or recover from conflicts. By targeting women, the foundation of society is attacked. In the case of Hamas and other terror organizations, their use of sexualized violence is not about individual assaults, but a central terror strategy. Hamas' use of sexualized violence was systematically planned and designed to target the Jewish people as a whole and to destroy their resilience. I stand in unwavering solidarity with all women who endure gender-based violence. We all need to recognize the immense courage and resilience of these women who, despite their suffering, continue to fight for justice and for their communities. It is crucial that we believe and support all women, regardless of their ethnicity, religion, or nationality. Jewish women, Muslim women, Christian women, Ukrainian women, Yazidi women, all women deserve to be heard and believed. I also want to emphasize that we must not allow any women's rights organization to apply double standards. It is deeply troubling that some organizations, including UN Women, took months to address the sexualized violence that occurred in Israel on October 7th. Looking for the future with regards to Israel, it is imperative to prioritize the release of the women hostages still held by Hamas. It is unconscionable to think of their situation, and their liberation must be an absolute priority. I reiterate our solidarity with all women who have endured these atrocities. We must protect these women and ensure that their voices are heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We appreciate your words. That's so important. And thank you for joining us today. So our next speaker is Dr. Kochav El-Kayam Levi, an expert on international law, human rights, and feminist theories. And she just received the Israel Prize for her solidarity efforts. Dr. Kochav El-Kayam Levi, please.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable ministers, guests, and our partners around the world. And a special thank you, MK Shelley Tal Meron, for establishing this important global coalition. These are exactly the kinds of actions and leadership that are so crucial at these times. Since the Hamas attack on October 7th, we've been fighting to give a voice to victims in Israel and have been documenting the most horrific crimes against humanity. Women were tortured, murdered in the presence of their children and babies, abducted into Gaza, found naked and burned, often to ashes or beyond recognition. It must be said, what we have seen here was sexual violence, rape, and inhumane killings as genocide. Violence that was aimed at destroying us as women, as a people, and as a society. Hamas aimed to inflict the worst pain and devastation in ways that must push to redefine international law and international institutions. The significance of this conference lies in this understanding. We need new perceptions that would create deterrence, prevent future crimes, and promise security and lasting peace. The current international conventions are simply not enough. Words are not enough. We are living in dangerous times. The law must meet the realities of women and the dangers they face. As an international scholar, it feels that international law loses its meaning and fails to respond to such evil. The protection of women's rights is becoming more and more fragile all around the world, regressing back to levels not seen in decades. Atrocities are occurring as we speak. Tragically, we still have hostages in Gaza, men, women, children, and families. For them, the 7th of October never ended. In this regard, Hamas weaponized families. The abuse against families that we are documenting at the Civil Commission represents horrific depths of depravity, and we are working with scholars all around the world to define a new crime against humanity that demands immediate recognitions. Families are tied to the identity of us as women, and this development warrants special attention. The international community must take decisive action to acknowledge these horrific crimes, the deliberate targeting of families as an assault on the very foundation of our society. These crimes underscore the need for a global feminist solidarity that is inclusive, empathetic, and principled, advocating for the rights of all women, including those whose experiences of otherness are bound up with national identity and conflict. Our work to document and research all the materials will take years, and the sad truth is that it will never, and we will never know everything that happened. Our children deserve more. Humanity deserves more. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I would like to give the floor now to Mrs. Rawan Osman, a Syrian Lebanese German activist, founder of Arab Asks. I believe, Mrs. Osman, that you were in Israel for free time since October 7. We see you a lot in the social media. You are a strong activist for the Abraham Accords and the normalization with Israel. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Thank you. One sentence in Hebrew. בזמן שגדלתי בליבנון, לעולם לא חשבתי שאדבר בכנסת. זה כבוד גדול. תודה רבה.
תודה רבה.
I was given 3 to 4 minutes to share insights with you on women's situation in many Arab countries, or in Syria and Lebanon, where my parents come from, where I grew up. You can imagine how common domestic violence and illiteracy are among women in many Arab countries, including Syria and progressive Lebanon. Are all women ignorant and abused? Of course not. Some are highly educated and financially independent. But even they have to face a misogynist system, if ever in conflict with an abusive husband, for example. Even the brightest women could be beaten up, raped, and easily deprived of their dignity, freedom, and even of their children. The system works against women. Needless to say that the poor underage girl forced into marriage doesn't stand a chance. Girls are often subjected to unfathomable cruelty, the epitome of which was the selling of Yazidi girls. I'm sorry, this is very moving. As young as 10-year-old as sex slaves, you'd think the world would have been outraged. Women are crushed, mothers are broken, and these are the educators tasked with raising the future generations. Even Arabs who were shocked on October 7th find it hard to sympathize with the Israeli women who were visibly, physically, and sexually assaulted. Because in the Arab culture, this is how women should be treated should a conflict with women arise. The Arab culture thrives on the concept of honor and shame, and these concepts are intertwined with women's sexuality and revenge. In the Arab world, to settle scores, the winner is the one who inflicts the most pain, not the wise who shows restraint. That is perceived as weakness. Following that logic, there is nothing one could do to the enemy worse than targeting women to shame and humiliate a nation. That is what Hamas tried to do on October 7th. Except Israel is not part of the Arab world. Here, women who are raped are not shamed and punished. Rapists are. Women in the Arab world who were raped, but also in many other corners of the world, also in Gaza and Iran, know that nothing justifies rape. Women who are treated unfairly in the Arab world are many, and among them, you have many allies rooting for your victory and the dismantlement of Hamas. May that pave the way for the demise of the axis of resistance. Imru Amen.
Amen.
In the Arab media, thousands are predicting the destruction of the Jewish state. What the Israelis are going through is too much for mountains to bear. You disagree on many things, but you are not enemies. Even your worst Israeli political opponent would not kill your son and rape your daughter. Your enemies are elsewhere. Don't allow them to sow hatred between you, because we are counting on you. We, those who stand with Israel, those who can distinguish between good and bad, between right and wrong. In order to win, you will have to fight together, and you will win. I know you will. You are the descendants of those who survived the Holocaust and went on to build an impressive country. You can do this. A country which will know peace with its neighbors, because Al-Assad and Nasrallah will not live forever, as we've seen with Raisi. You are our hope in the Levant, our model. Nothing will extinguish the light in our hearts. Not Hamas, not October 7th. Here we are in Jerusalem, standing together, proud and tall, and working for better days. Am Yisrael Chai.
Rawan, you're such an amazing woman. You moved us all. Thank you so much for your words. Thank you for speaking in Hebrew. We are amazed.
אני לומדת עברית.
מדהימה.
Stop thanking me. If someone rapes my daughter or kidnaps my son, I expect the same of you.
You're
I'm
so
doing
right.
my due diligence.
We're so proud to have you here, and I think you had a standing ovation almost, so thank you so much. It is my greatest honor to present to you member of Knesset Yair Lapid, the chairman of the Yesh Atid party, head of opposition, of course, and the former prime minister. Please.
Good morning. We came here today to cry out against silence. At Columbia University, New York, protesters stand and shout against Israel, against Jews, quoting Hamas slogans. But when it comes to sexual violence against Israeli women, silence. In Trafalgar Square in London, people who see themselves as liberals, who see themselves as progressives, talk about the rights of terrorists and the reason they justify murder. But when it comes to rape, silence. In Dublin and Madrid and UCLA and Berkeley, useful idiots shout from the river to the sea. Without understanding, they are calling for genocide against Jews. They believe everything they see on their phones, but do not believe the horrific testimonies of sexual abuse by Hamas terrorists. When it comes to this, silence. Intellectuals like Judith Butler, organizations like Amnesty International, who for years have spoken about the need to believe women who come forward, to support them. Stop believing when the women are Jewish. Stop supporting when they are Israeli. Instead of support, silence. Throughout history, there has been a conspiracy of silence surrounding sexual violence during war. This is what enabled it. This is what always enables it. Women are raped, humiliated, murdered, and the word is silent. We came here today because we will not be silent in the face of silence. We will speak the truth loudly, clearly and distinctly, these women are victims of violence, they are victims of rape, they are victims of abuse, and they are victims of silence. Silence is a crime against women. Silence must end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very emotional for me to represent our next speaker because I feel like my heart is with our families, the hostages' families. It's always difficult for me to speak about this, but it's my honor to give the floor to Miss Simona Steinbecher, the mother of Doron Steinbecher, who is an Israeli hostage for the past 227 days, and you can see her picture before she was in captivity and during her captivity. And Simona, the floor is yours. Simona, bevakasha.
First of all, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all who came here. My name is Simona Steinbecher. Like you see, I am a mother of Doron Steinbecher. Doron is 21 and single. She born in Kibbutz Kfar Aza. She likes children and animals, and she is a stagiaire veterinary. On the 7th of October at 10:20 in the morning, the terrorists, the Hamas, caught Doron, take her around the bed from her apartment, from the place who need to be the safe place, from the safe room. We know this because she phoned to me with a big afraid and tell me they caught me. With those words, I'm going to sleep in the night when I can and wake up in the morning. After 4 days, we got a voice called that she sent to her a friends group in a WhatsApp, and we can heard her in a terrible fight cry, they caught me, and when we can heard Arab voice said, Allahu Akbar. It was the single sense that we had from Doron, because no one who came back saw her until 26 January, the day 107, when the Hamas sent a picture, and after that a video. We can saw Doron skin, like you can see, white in the face, and we are terrible thinking about what happened to her. Doron need to take medicine early, and probably they don't give her. Upset woman, we heard about what happened, what the Hamas do to the woman there. They are never alone. They go then to every place, to shower, toilet, look at them all the minute, every minute. And we heard about the physical and sexual that happened there. I'm like a mother, area afraid what happened to Doron there. Thank you. Report of the UN Special Representative of Familia Faden. Further information about the violence that happened in 7 October, the terms of the woman there. Their time is out for the woman. Today is 7 days. Think about it. 7 days in a big meeting. I am torn. To the rivers, international and unnational, both, and called like a mother who had a daughter in Gaza in the hands of terrorists. Do shout of those who can't, and do it to rest, to bring their own women hostages and everyone back. Thank you.
תודה רבה. Thank you so much, Simona. Thank you. We appreciate it. I know how difficult it is to speak, and we appreciate it. You're an amazing woman, an amazing mother, and an inspiration to all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I would like to introduce now Steve Maman. Steve Maman is the founder of the CYCI organization, an organization that helped to the liberation of Christians and Yazidi women and children of Iraq. You and your organization succeed to free 140 women, Yazidi women and children from Iraq. You did it, part of it, with your own money. You're a Canadian businessman. You came from Canada to Israel to participate to this event. Some call you the Jewish Schindler. So the floor is yours for 5 minutes, Steve.
Thank you. Members of Parliament, Shali Tal Meron, Mr. Yair Lapid, Mr. Emmanuel Navon, Mr. Yossi Abrabanel, my friend, distinguished guests and friends. Thank you for inviting me to this crucial session. I would like to start by sharing a text that I wrote years ago that deeply resonates with the challenges that our nation faces today. Know that everything that is happening to us today, as a nation or as Jews, is purely and only anti-Semitism, nothing else. Dear world, you murder us. You put us in ovens. You put us in gas chambers. You take away our dignity. You make us walk in the streets naked to shoot us in the back, like the cowards that you are. You are our neighbors. You watch this unfold impatiently so you can steal all our belongings. You perpetrate lies about us. You manipulate the news to make sure that the nations hate us. You destroy bank files so you could keep what is ours. You hide our art and you claim ownership to it, knowing it belongs to us. You know we are getting annihilated and pretend you don't know. You take your time to come to our rescue because somewhere deep inside, you are enjoying this moment. You use a different standard to judge us. You're jealous of us. You wished we ceased to exist. You dare attack us after the Holocaust. You dare publish lies about our ownership to a land. You dare raise the level of hatred with your publications. You dare gang up against us at your headquarters. You dare use all of our intellectual properties in almost everything you own. You heal thanks to us. Your lives are surrounded by our inventions. Yet, you want us dead and gone. We are the Jewish people, descendants of Abraham, the people God chose. We are here to stay, and we decided long ago we aren't going to die so you could claim victory. Attacks, news outlets, manipulation, United Nations resolutions, and all the rest won't help you in your plans against us. Why? Because I am that Jew. On October 7th, Hamas established itself as the new face of terror, overshadowing ISIS, while the world remembers the image of the Jordanian pilot burnt alive by ISIS. October 7th brought a new level of horror to dozens of Israelis that were burnt, mutilated, beheaded, raped at the hands of Hamas terrorists. I am Steve Maman, a simple Moroccan-born Jew known as what they call the Jewish Schindler, who documented and helped 25,000 Yazidis and Christian victims of ISIS, who freed 140 captives, Yazidi captives in Iraq, despite challenges and unimaginable obstacles. A Jew rescuing Yazidis and Christians in the Arab lands contradicted the media's narrative, which often portrays Jews as perpetrators rather than saviors. I became a problem for helping the innocent. Since October 7th, the media has suppressed your story, even going so far to claim it never happened, while others justified it as warranted resistance to Israeli oppression of the Gazans of Hamas. Someone tell me, were children bound and shot to death with their guts cut out constitutes a warranted resistance? I want to know. The integrity of facts and truth has been compromised in this world, while the moral compass has veered completely off course. We live in a time where intelligent people are being silenced so that stupid people are not offended. There's a deliberate and discernible pattern at play here. The media is actively suppressing the events of October 7th to rewrite history according to their chosen narrative. The problem lies in the fact that the plight of a deceased Jew doesn't capture the attention of the masses like sensationalized stories do. It all boils down to views, revenue, and likes. In Israel, our situation was quite different. While both constitute rape as a weapons of war, the case we faced was far worse. Humiliation, mutilation, and murder took place during those rapes. Women raped in front of their loved ones and then shot. Knives inserted into their private parts. Scalped heads. Nails inserted into their private parts. Indescribable pain must have taken place before that death. And much more. I've seen the actual photos and videos, thanks to Zaka, yesterday. Attacking innocent people and subjecting hostages to torture is not an act of freedom fighting, nor does it constitute a war worthy of collaboration from those who suppress the truth about such inhumane violence. Hamas's objective was to cause immense pain and suffering in pursuit of their jihad, allowing the horrors to be etched into our collective memory and history. Their successes ensured that this event will be recounted for generations to come. The global response to victims of radical Islam has consistently been one of silence, allowing such atrocities to continue unchecked, perpetuating the cycle of violence. Praying for the return of our hostages, for the safety of our population, soldiers, for the annihilation of all terror groups who seek our destruction. Am Israel Chai. Toda Rabba.
Okay, we were supposed now to have the testimony by Nihad Barikat, which is a Yazidi woman that was freed by Steve. I believe we have a technical problem with the Zoom. Can you try to bring her by phone so we can still have her testimony?
We will try. If it doesn't work out, we will go to the next.
You want to say a few words about Nihad? She was married to the number 2 of ISIS, right?
Yes. Nihad Barakat was saved under the cameras, literally, under a documentary that was being filmed by a U.S. media corp in Iraq. She was liberated, and we found out at a later date that she had been taken by Jihadi Sid. Siddhartha is his name. He was the ISIS in command of all hostages and captives. He picked Nihad as a wife, took her by force. He was the so-called Beatles, if one recalls, the famous beheadings on national TVs across the world by the Beatles, 4 English-speaking, perfect Londonese English-speaking men. They had a name, the Beatles, and Nihad found herself married to jihadi Sid. We snatched her from his house through a complex operation and found out at a later date that she had been married to him. The media frenzy that went around her after it was discovered was second to none. The day that President Donald Trump, God bless him, had targeted jihadi Sid and killed him in a drone strike, I called her and I told her, Nihad, you can close your eyes. Your nightmare is over. She was just remarried. And when she came out, the day she walked out of Mosul, I was on Skype looking at her, and I told the reporter, she's such a beautiful girl, she must have had a very hard time there. She came too close to her, and I asked her a question. I told her, if there's one thing in life that you want now, what would it be? I'll grant you, I'll give you anything you want. Just tell me the one thing that would just fix you, make you happy. She told me, I have to get married. I told her, why would you want to get married if you just escape the worst? She told me, if I don't get married, my population is going to disappear with what they are doing to us.
Thank you so much, Steve. First of all, thank you for coming to Israel, especially for this convention. And thank you for telling your story and all your amazing work. I can only pray and hope that our hostages are released immediately as soon as possible. Unfortunately, we were having some technical problems with Nihad, so we're going to go to the next speaker, and hopefully maybe later we'll be able to go back to her. So now it is my honor to invite retired Judge Nava Ben-Or, a member of Project Dinah, dedicated to the sexual atrocities that took place on October 7th, and I had the honor of going to the Italian Senate in Rome and speaking together with Nava, which is an amazing and inspiring woman. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Knesset member Meron. Your inspiring talk in the Senate of Rome is still with me. I just want to say in a few words that the Dinah project was formed by a team of experts consisting of, but not limited to, senior female lawyers from a variety of disciplines that was formed on an ad hoc basis in light of the events since October 7th, and after identifying the need for assistance, advice, and treatment of various challenges arising from the situation. And in my brief talk, I would like to elaborate on 2 issues that we are dealing with. The one issue is the challenge of accountability, and the other one is the uniqueness of the phenomenon of CRSV, though I will not talk much about it because it was already elaborated on in by previous speakers here. With regard to accountability, one must understand that we are not talking of a war. We are not talking of a war at all, but definitely we are not talking of a war between 2 armies with clear chain of command, with clear commands. We are talking actually about a militia attacking civil population. It's not a war. It's heinous attack, cruel attack against unarmed, innocent people, with no direct chain of command and no clear commands, no rules. If we stick to the classic criminal code, there will be a serious problem of accountability with regards to the perpetrators. And I believe that the situation of mass atrocities perpetrated by militias must be dealt with a fresh understanding of the notion of accountability in order to avoid impunity. I would like to suggest that people who knowingly join a massive, brutal, and murderous operation do it with the understanding that they give up their personality, they give up their moral values, and they surrender them to a new, so to speak, morality, which is basically normalizing evil. They do it because they know that only in a mess, only in the company of many like them, will they be able to forget their individuality and their human values. And if during the attack there is a widespread phenomenon of sexual violence, then it should be attributed to anyone who took part in the attack, since in willingly entering this group, he knew that all moral values are suspended. Every act which is done in order to achieve the ultimate goal, the extinction of the attacked community, should be attributed to each and every one of the attackers. We need to change paradigm and develop legal and evidentiary presumptions against mass perpetrators who take part in such heinous attack. This, in short, is my idea, my thinking about attribution. And I would like to add just 2 sentences with regard to the phenomenon of sexual violence in the conflict zone. This is sexual terror. It is aimed against the entire community, not only at the immediate victims. All of us here in Israel were victims of the 7th of October attack. It's a low-cost weapon, readily available, with extremely high impact. I would like to end my words with reference to Hannah Arendt, the Knesset member Meron mentioned in her talk. She drew up the paradox of sexual terror, which turns generative sexuality into instrument of death. This is the paradox we have to bear in mind, and we have to fight that it will never happen again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Shira Shacham, former intelligence officer and security expert that was in charge of collecting evidences of sexual assaults after October 7. Please.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank everyone for coming here, for supporting this cause of combating gender-based violence. I think that's your visit to Israel is not obvious to us, not in this time of war, and not at all. So thanks again. I'd like to start with a quote of Nolene Hazer, a UN official, saying, "In war, there is no victory for women, no matter which side wins. Women are the worst victims of war, and hence, the highest stakeholders for peace." This quote is important because it removes the borders and the distinction in which we look at the conflict. All women, severely affected by conflicts. Women from all sides of the border, in any conflict border, at any war zone, are the worst victims, like we saw here. Therefore, the presence of so many international representatives here is so impressive, and I think it's a wall against the victimization and the targeting of civilians in general, and particularly women in conflicts. In the multi-layered attack carried out by Hamas on October 7th, many war tactics were used. One of the most horrific ones was the gender-based violence against victims, men and women, mainly women though. In coming to see gender-based evidence, one cannot see this. He can't see the weapons, one cannot always see the injuries, nor talk with the victims or the witnesses. Shame, trauma, and self-blaming are dominant components among individuals and communities. From many cases researched in history, we know that survivors and witnesses need time, sometimes years, to tell and share their story and their truth. And in contradiction to the need to know and to collect the evidence, we should still struggle to adopt a victim-centered approach and the do no harm principle. By forming an international coalition against the CRSV here, this brave forum tells all state and non-state actors that you are not above the law. Gender-based violence is a war crime and a crime against humanity. And working towards the recognition of these crimes while demanding accountability of the perpetrators is essential for women and girls in Israel, in Ukraine, in Sudan, in the DRC, and many other conflicts worldwide. International tribunals for CRSV are crucial, as well as using the UN sanctions mechanism against terror organizations and every group that uses GBV, gender-based violence, as a weapon of war. And lastly, I want to finish with a quote from Professor Catherine McKinnon that speaks about how we should talk about the perpetrators. And this is from the article of Rape, Genocide, and Women's Human Rights. They are allowed, whether understood, one man to another, as an excess of passion in peace or the spoils of victory in war, or as the liberties, civil or otherwise, of their perpetrators. They are legally rationalized, officially winked at, and in some instances, formally condoned. This is not rape out of control. It is rape under control. It is also rape unto death, rape as massacre, rape to kill, and to make the victims wish they were dead. It is rape as an instrument of forced exile and to make you leave your home and never want to go back. It is rape to be seen and heard and watched and told to others. Rape as a spectacle. It is rape to drive a wedge through a community to shatter a society and to destroy people. Thank you. Perpetrators should be accountable for the crimes of the most vulnerable, and only a strong international coalition like this can confront this kind of atrocities. And last word to Rawan, يكتر خيرك وشكرا إلك ومش رح ننساكي أنت وولادك. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Shira. Let me just ask you, because we still have a lot of speakers and family members who need to speak, please keep up with the 3 minutes slot so that we can allow everyone to speak. Our next speaker is Professor Ifat Biton, one of the main leaders of the struggle to recognize the LGBT at the UN and Parliament. Please.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, on this important convening organized by MK Tal Miron. With our international allies, I'm honored to speak to you as part of this international community of human rights advocates and of universal feminists. My work in the field of GBV is decades long and since October 7th dedicated to what has happened here in Israel. We're here to talk about sexual violence committed against Israeli women, but let's face it, this isn't about us alone. It's about all of us, not just Israeli women. We have a global responsibility to each other. Forgive me for being a bit rough, but if this has happened to us, it can happen anywhere. It could happen to you too. We must stand together and prevent such atrocities from happening ever again. We all know war takes a terrible toll, but the reality is women bear the brunt of the suffering. Their safety, their lives, their very bodies are under attack. And the pain goes beyond the physical. The denial of justice for sexual crimes adds another layer of trauma, a wound that festers when it's not acknowledged. So why do we need this acknowledgement and recognition? Recognition is more than just a word, it's a lifeline. It's a step toward a brighter future for these women, for their families and communities, and for all of us. Let's speak the truth so healing can begin. Let's work together to ensure victims have the tools they need to rebuild their lives. Realizing the importance of recognition was what led us to criticize the legal system's oblivious attitude toward an array of evidentiary challenges in proving sex crimes on regular times. These challenges intensify in sex crimes committed as part of a terrorist attack. we all know terrorist attacks are inherently brutal and inhumane. The crimes committed by Hamas were especially so, pure evil, fueled by sadism. But within these horrific acts, recognizing the sex crimes, which are always more prone to concealment, rendered crucial their immediate and peculiar recognition. The uniqueness of the Israeli case places it in a different category and in a different experience than that known to us in cases of SBV linked or gender-based violence linked to terror. Israel is a strong Western country with a rapid and organized military response capability, which motivates the militants to cause as many and as severe humanitarian casualties as they fear the limited time to carry out their plans, which causes them to try and cause massive chaos, which causes increased paralysis of the forensic mechanisms. From this theoretical insight of reality, recognition of sex war crimes must be made and must be looked at differently. The challenges of proving SBV in Israel, as in elsewhere, are enormous, and the international community must reconsider its rules on recognition so that energies will be channeled to healing rather than to proving to the world what we know very clearly has happened.
Thank you so much.
I would like now to give the floor to Ambassador Ahuva Spiller, head of the European Division of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel. Ahuva, this is also the place to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the great job you do for allowing us to be your partner, and especially in Europe, but all around the world. And you are our front through the embassies of Israel all around the world. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, honorable members of Knesset, members of Elnet, ambassadors and diplomatic corps, distinguished guests from abroad, and dear families of members of victims and hostages. It is with deep sense of responsibility that I address you today as representative of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Our ministry has been working tirelessly to expose the international community the atrocities committed against Israeli women by Hamas. Never before has Israel faced such a widespread terror attack in which so many women were murdered, burned, and raped at such a scale. The evidence points to dozens of cases of rape and gender-biased abuse. The New York Times reported over 50 such incidents. Tragically, most of the victims are not with us today to tell their stories. Since that day, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through its 108 missions abroad, has been working to give a voice and a name to the victims and to reflect the atrocities to the entire world. Awareness-raising activities have been carried out in dozens of capitals from Beijing to Paris, from Geneva to New York. We sent dozens of experts who investigated the forensic and living testimonies from the field of international law, police, military, welfare, and academia. Some of them are here present today. Our efforts have led to significant results. To mention one is the European Union's decision on the 12th of April to impose sanctions on Hamas under the EU Global Human Rights Sanctions regime. The European Council has also condemned Hamas in its strongest possible terms for its brutal terrorist attack, recognizing Israel's right to defend itself and calling for the immediate release of all hostages without any precedent. The Council has also stressed the grave concern for the hostages' safety and well-being, demanding that Hamas immediately grant humanitarian access to all remaining hostages. Furthermore, on the global arena, the comprehensive report released by the Secretary General's Special Representative for Sexual Violence in Conflict, Mrs. Pramila Patten, on March 4, 2024, has showed the world the compelling evidence of the sexual violence committed by Hamas. And I quote, "We found clear and convincing information that sexual violence, including rape, sexualized torture, and cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment has been committed against hostages, and we have reasonable grounds to believe that such violence may still be ongoing against those in captivity. The report also found evidence of suggested that conflict-related sexual violence, including rape and gang rape, was not an isolated incident but occurred in multiple locations during October 7th. So, it is deeply frustrating that despite these findings, the United Nations Secretary General and UN Women still failed to specifically call out Hamas for their crimes. The use of gender-based violence as a weapon of war is a violation of international law and human rights. It is imperative that all of us stand united in condemnation of Hamas and other organizations and their action. We call upon each and every one of you to raise this issue in your respective countries, to ensure the truth is known, and to demand that they be held accountable for their action. We must not forget the plight of the hostages who remain in Hamas's captivity. The report of Ms. Patton has highlighted the ongoing sexual violence and torture inflicted upon these women. It is crucial that the international community demands the immediate and unconditional release of the hostages, especially in light of the atrocities, acts of sexual violence they are enduring at the hands of their captors. Together, we must stand united in our condemnation. We must send a clear message that such action will not be tolerated and that those responsible will be brought to justice. It can be done only through all of our collective efforts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we are going to watch a very special project that the name of it is No Silence. It's a fashion show. It's difficult to say the words fashion show, but it's inspired by the events of October 7th, and we will watch it now. And I invite them to begin.
All seem to be lost with no end in sight. But now over the horizon we see hope. The sun is shining once again onto our fate. Once again we can stomp our feet and clap our hands and rejoice in the sound. Once again we can see our friends and hug them with delight. And all through the night we can move our bodies like flowers we bloom when the music pours onto our skin. We can move, we can breathe, we can love, we can dance again.
October 7, 6:29 a.m., the rave party. Kidnapping. Rape. Lost Paradise. Matthias. Body bags. Media. The hostages. Bring them home now.
Should be understandable, undeniable. You can't argue at all. Unbelievable what is happening in the world. Bring them back now, we don't care. Please understand, our heart is there, and we need them to come back home. It is unperceivable, unbelievable what is happening here. The world won't see it, but we can feel it. We hear it and see it everywhere. We don't care if it seems wrong, how we choose to right this wrong. But if you'd be in our place, would you do it any different, brother? Bring them back home now, we don't care what it takes. Take the evil off this earth before it breaks. Bring them back loud and clear. We don't care if it hurts your ears. We have no fear. Bring them home.
The silence of NGOs. Men and women in captivity. Israeli heroes.
אהבתי גוברת, רוצה להתבגר במדינה שמתגברת על כל הקשיים, בכל המובנים, דואגת לילדים שלה וגם למייסדים, קולטת עלייה, לומדים מניסיון, אז נזכור מה שהיה ונעשה את זה נכון.
Tribute to women by No Silence.
Ladder out my symphony, play with me, look into my eyes and see, people walk away but never say goodbye. Someone stole the moon tonight, took my light, everything is black and white. Who's the fool who told you boys don't cry? Hours and hours and powers, life is no game but it's ours. While the time goes wild, every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride, dancing in the storm. I got nothing to hide. Take it out and leave the world behind. Baby, promise me you'll hold me again. I'm still broken from this hurricane.
Hope. Hatikva.
I truly want to thank the No Silence exhibition, which was truly chilling. And you know, they flew this show from abroad, especially for this convention. I want to thank them and all the participants and the people that are behind this show. Thank you so much for doing this. I would like to give the floor now to the member of Knesset, Pnina Tamano-Shata, from the Blue and White Party. She's the head of the Women's Right and Gender Equality Committee in the Knesset. We work together on many issues, among them sexual assault, and she does a lot of work within her committee, and the floor is yours, Pnina.
Thank you, my colleague, MK Shelley Meron. First of all, I want to welcome all the representative, distinguished guests. I heard ministers and also ambassadors and other representatives from all over the world. We heard the anthem, Hatikva, and we will never lose the hope. But the hope, the items in the hope, the elements in hope, it is people create. And unfortunately, since October 7, the Israeli society has gone through and still going through one of the most difficult period of time. We still mourn our victims. Just yesterday, I attended the funeral of Shani Luke, that beautiful young woman that murdered brutally. We all remember her picture, her body, behind of van when a terrorist with gun after they murder her. And we still need to remember there is a young woman in the captivity. And when we say bring them back, it means that we need to do all we can to bring them back. First of all, as a responsibility of the Israel government, but not only. I want to thank you, Shelley, about this important conference that we are raise a voice and say to our colleagues, leaders, women leaders, and not only from all over the world, we must to struggle together. Our alliance must to be strong against terrorism. We can't allow to ourselves in 2024 that women will raped, will burn alive, children burn alive in front of their parents. This is not something that we can imagine. And still, we have here families each and every day that came to here, to this house, and begging that we will bring the family that their dearest that in the captivity. And unfortunately, there is a lot of victims that can't raise their voice because they murdered, as I said. I believe in the goodness of the world. I believe that the good can win, but we can do that if the world will not showing apathy. If leaders, bravely leaders, will go back to their countries and do this discussion in their parliaments, in their homes. Unfortunately, in this period of time, to be Israeli and even Jew, it feels lonely. It feels lonely. And you know what? It is a prize to the terror, to the terrorism. I want to remind you, we left Gaza in 2005. Instead, developing the education, the welfare, the Hamas terrorists digging tunnels, send the missiles, and unfortunately we saw what happened in 7 October. And it goes with us each and every minute in this house as a decision maker, but not only. And I want to thank you about your representation here, but we need to take that one step more and to raise a voice that no one can ignore. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we will continue to do a lot of work together and act on behalf of the things that you've just mentioned. I would like to give the floor now to Mendy Damari, the mother of Emily Damari, an Israeli female taken hostage from Kfar Aza into Gaza. I want to thank you for coming here. I know how difficult it is for you, the family members, to speak and to come here, and I truly appreciate it. And please, Mendy.
Can you hear me? Hi, thank you for all being here today. I've been listening to people talk, and I'm really in awe of some of the people here. And I'm also surprised and glad at the amount of men who this time are here, because normally when I do speak, it's 99% women, 1% men. So thank you for the men that are here as well. The subject of gender-based violence as a weapon of war is so important and needs to be discussed openly in as many platforms as possible. And in that way, we can achieve its prevention from occurring now and in the future. Therefore, this coalition is important in advancing its discussion and deterrence. I'm Amanda Damari. Before the 7th of October, I lived for the last 30 years in relative peace as a kindergarten teacher on Kibbutz Kfar Aza, with my 4 children, 3 boys and Emily, and 4 grandchildren, 3 girls and a boy. I'm the mother of Emily Damari, aged 27. Emily, my strong, smart and charismatic daughter, whose smile and humor lights up any room she enters, was shot and taken by force from her own apartment on Kibbutz Kfar Aza by Hamas terrorists on the 7th of October. Emily was seen alive by the hostages that came home, but that was November. I've been deliberating whether to speak here or not, because as much as I support the subject of this conference, I'm not a politician or a diplomat or an expert on the subject, only a mother. And I must admit that so far, I have no proof of any sexual abuse that's been carried out against my daughter. And I'm also superstitiously frightened that by talking about the subject, it might actually become a reality for her. But I think that I must speak out now for her and the other women, because just the thought that it might have happened or could be happening to her now in the terror tunnels in Gaza is enough to make me break out in a cold sweat and not sleep at night. So I wonder what thoughts are going through Emily's mind in captivity, under the total control of her terrorist guards, knowing that it could happen any second to her if they wished to do anything to her. What sort of psychological or physical threat of real sexual torture and terror is happening to her? I'm not a psychologist, but I know enough to realize that what she's going through now will never be erased from her memory. And what sort of world is it when, after being presented so many times with the truth of sexual torture that happened on the 7th of October and continued afterwards to many of the young women in Hamas captivity, people, particularly women, all over the world aren't crying out for women hostages' immediate release, for Emily's release. Despite the brave efforts of witnesses like Amit Susna, their plight is being ignored. It's written about in the newspapers and forgotten about by most people 2 days later. Hamas isn't the first to use this method of torture. The exact same thing has been happening for years in so many conflict zones. I met an ambassador for Sierra Leone in Kfar Aza, and he said he'd come to see what happened there because the same thing had happened to his family in Freetown. That happened in Freetown in the 1990s, more than 30 years ago, and yet apparently no progress has been made in stamping out this atrocity. If the same thing has been allowed to happen on the 7th of October 2023, and is happening up to this day. In this conflict, my daughter is involved. Before the 7th of October, I myself could hardly imagine the possibility of such harm coming to someone in my family. But if the world doesn't wake up and do something actively to prevent the possibility of its next occurrence, the next time it could be your daughter or granddaughter suffering the same terrible consequence of conflict as Emily is going through now. It's really not so far away from you as you might like to think, and it's time to take a stand against it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. You know, we spoke yesterday and you were deliberating, as you said, if you want to come and speak or not. And I'm so happy that you decided to speak because your words are so meaningful and they touched us all. And I thank you for the courage that you showed. And you're not just a mother. A mother is a lot and everything. So thank you so much. Our next speaker is Miss Elaaheh. Did I say it correct? Okay, Jamali, Forum of Foreign Relations, Iranian British Advocate for Human Rights. It's a great honor to have you here. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Shelly. Member of the Knesset. It is an official honor for me to be here amongst all of you esteemed people, especially for something as important as what we are talking about, sexual violence as a weapon of war against women. We know that the reason why I do what I do is because I've been fighting the Islamic Republic, because this is exactly what they do. The Islamic Republic for 45 years has trained its proxies to commit heinous acts of sexual violence against their so-called enemies, and those enemies happen to have been civilians of Iran too. Time and time again during the uprising of the woman life freedom in Iran, we know of so many reports that have come out that IRGC members, Hezbollah members, and other proxy members from the Middle East have come into Iran and have actually raped and tortured and mutilated and killed Iranian men and women. I stand here with you because we have to put a stop to this. We have to do everything collectively as an international community. Our world has been in danger for far too many years, and our women around the world are paying for that price. Children are paying for that price. Young men are paying for that price. When a father witnesses the rape of her daughter, whether it is in Sudan, in Afghanistan, or in the kibbutzes, the pain will remain throughout the history of our existence. But our actions would be our only way out. Our actions of community, of putting an end to the activities of the Islamic Republic, the biggest perpetrator of our time right now against humanity, against women especially. We are living in a gender apartheid in Iran, and the exported ideology has reached all the shores around the world. Away from that exported ideology, we have seen ideology realized in actual action. 1400 years ago, through the Islamic invasion of Iran, women of Iran were the first victims and those who paid the price for the invasion of Iran. They became sex slaves, they became belly dancers, and so on. We see the ripples of that horrible, heinous invasion. We cannot allow this idea of Islamism taking over the world, weaponizing our bodies against us and torturing us, causing femicide around the world, and then call it religious ideologies, culture. This is not culture, this is not acceptable, and unless we actually take action now, we have to face the future generations, and we have to face our own failures. 45 years ago, 96% of Iranians did not believe that this government, the Islamic Republic, will come and take over their country, and they never in their worst nightmares imagined that they're going to become enemies with their oldest brothers and sisters. Iranians have always stood against this tyranny. In March of 1979, right after the Islamic Republic's entrance into Iran on 8th of March, Iranian women in their thousands came and they asked for a stop to this gender apartheid. The world stayed silent. The world stayed silent against the oppression of Iranian women, and the world is staying silent against the oppression of Israeli women. Your country was brutalized, your women were brutalized, but just like my dear Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi always says, We are as weak as this. We are strongest. My apologies, I'm paraphrasing here. We are as strong as the weakest link in our chain. So let's be strong for one another and put an end to this violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I would like to give the floor to Kat Perez-Shakdam, Executive Director of the Forum for Foreign Relations and Director Europe for American Center of Levant Studies. Kat, please.
Thank you so much. Shali Talmeron, thank you ever so much for having me here. Yossi, it's always a pleasure seeing you. I'd like to pay tribute to Lily right here. We've been working together for quite some time, and I know what she's been through, what her people have been through. Today, I'd like to do two things. I'd like to act as a witness, because I've been to the Islamic Republic of Iran. I've walked through the corridors of powers. I've met with Ayatollah Khamenei. I've met with now deceased President Raisi. I know what they're doing. I also would like to issue a warning, a very dear warning to Western capitals, because if they do not act now, today, and back Israel with everything that they've got, if they do not realize that what happened on October 7th will happen, it's not a maybe, will happen in Western capitals across the Western world, then you might just as well give it up now to the Islamic Republic. They are coming for us, and I'm going to tell you why in just a second. For 10 years, I've done many things in my life, but I married a Muslim man and moved to Yemen. From Yemen, I faced horrible anti-Semitism. I've escaped with my life, barely. I survived it. I know what it feels like to be a Jewish woman in the Middle East. I know what it feels like to be a Jewish woman in the Islamic world. And one day I woke up with nothing left but me, my identity, my DNA. And I remembered that my grandfather fought Nazi Germany, that some of my family perished under Nazi Germany, and so I decided to fight back. And me fighting back meant taking it to the architect of this terror that we have seen on October 7th, and we talked about Hamas. Yes, Hamas did it, but who commanded it, who ordered it, who thought it, who dreamt it? The Islamic Republic of Iran. And I realized that when I was in Yemen, I've seen how Yemen was changed, perverted, how its history, its culture, even its way of interpreting Islam was corrupted by the Islamic Republic. And so I went there, as you do. And I've met with them, and I'm telling you right here, and it's not talked about, what happened on October 7th was planned because they knew they could, and they knew they could because they've done it to Syria, they've done it to Lebanon, they've done it to Yemen, they've done it to Iraq. They're doing it again and again, and no one paid attention because those are just Arab women, those are just Muslim women, and today, just Israeli women, Jewish women. So when are women be paid attention to? When will it just be enough to be a woman and to say that rape is a bad idea on any good day of the week, especially on a Friday? I'd like to say also this. There is an agenda at the heart of the Islamic Republic of Iran. This agenda is to use sexual violence as not just a tool of war, not just a weapon of war, not just as a crime against humanity, but a tool for genocide. But I got news for you. If they say that the Jews need to go first, the Jews are not the last one to go. This war is against the Western world. I would like to remind you that the slogan of the regime is death to America, death to Israel, in that order. When you look at Columbia University, when you look at what is going on in the streets of the UK and the streets of Paris, and sometimes I'm ashamed to say that I'm French when I see what French people are doing, their refusal to acknowledge what is happening. It is architected, it is planned. They've perverted, the ideology has seeped like a poison into our society. They're turning right and make people believe that it is wrong. They turn light into dark and dark into light, and we have to do something about it. And I'm so grateful to be standing here today. I think my grandfather would be very proud. I want to thank you, Shelley, so very much for what you're doing. You truly are shining a light in the dark. I would like to pay tribute to the Israeli people, the families of the hostages, the victims, all of you here today. Thank you for fighting this fight. I live in the UK. It's not easy every day to wear your Magen David, but I do. I will continue to do so. I will continue to fight for you, with you, by your side too. I know what it is like to live in the Middle East. I fell in love with it, but it needs to be freed. It needs to be liberated. And I say it starts here today in Jerusalem, and they're calling for the liberation of many things. I call for the liberation of the free people of the Middle East. I'm Israel Chai. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kat. There are such amazing women here at the table and all around, and it's truly, it's very, very moving to hear you, and thank you so much for flying all the way, especially for this convention. We appreciate it. I want to give the floor now to Sasha Arayev, the sister of Karina Arayev, who is an Israeli hostage, as you probably all know. She's a young soldier that was taken to Gaza, and now we want to hear you, Sasha, and thank you so much for making this effort and coming here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me and calling for this conference, very important conference. It is really hard for me to see the picture of my sister on the left side, her on the October 7th, and on the right, the one that I know, my little sister, with the smile and the lovely eyes. So Karina is my little and my only sister. She is only 19 years old, and she has been held hostage in Gaza for 227 days by Hamas terrorists. Karina is held captive with 16 other women, and we know that at least some have been subjected to sexual violence. We have no information about Karina's current health, but we are aware that sexual violence, including rape, is occurring in captivity. With your permission, let me share some of the experiences other women endured on the dreadful October 7th and since then. In a New York Times article about sexual violence on October 7th, survivors told of a young woman with copper-colored hair, blood running down her back, pants pushed down to her knees. One man pulled her by the hair and made her bend over. Another penetrated her, and every time she flinched, he plunged a knife into her back. Another woman was shredded into pieces. While one terrorist raped her, another pulled out a box cutter and sliced off her breast. One continues to rape her, and the other throws her breast to someone else, and they play with it, throw it, and it falls on the ground. Amit Susana, released after 55 days in captivity, bravely testified about her experience with her captor. He came towards me and shoved his gun at my forehead. After hitting her and forcing her to remove her towel, Muhammad groped her, set her on the edge of the bathtub, and hit her again. He dragged her at gunpoint back to the child's bedroom, a room covered in images of the cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants, she recalled. Then he, with the gun pointed at me, forced me to commit a sexual act on him, Miss Susana said. UN Special Representative Pramila Patten stated in her special report that there is clear and convincing evidence of sexual violence, including rape, sexualized torture, cruel and inhumane treatment committed against hostages, with reasonable ground belief such violence is ongoing. The act of sexual violence committed by Hamas on October 7th and since then constitute crimes against humanity. I ask all of you from all around the world to unite in declaring that the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war is unacceptable and that the Hamas must release all the hostages, women, men and children, immediately. I am filled with constant worry for my little sister Karina, whom I couldn't protect. I am doing everything in my power to raise awareness at every opportunity, but my family and I feel helpless in the face of this cruelty. Please don't forget my sister Karina. Please don't forget all 17 women in captivity. Please don't forget all 128 hostages that are still there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sasha. We saw the picture of your beautiful sister. I think it's shocking to look at the two pictures, one next to the other. And I think your words, truly, I think maybe you're the bravest person in this room for telling us these testimonies, for speaking about this so openly. And I thank you for making this effort, and hopefully your words will penetrate the hearts of everybody here in this room, and we will do everything that we can to bring them back home immediately. That is our life mission right now, so thank you so much. I would like to give the floor now to member of Knesset, chairman of the Israeli Labor Party. Merav Michaeli, please, the floor is yours.
הכנס מתנהל באנגלית?
כן, את יכולה
בכיף.
בעברית, יש
No,
גם
no
סימולטן.
problem. So first of all, thank you, Shelley, for holding this extremely important gathering. It's just so infuriating that, what are we, like about 30 years after we have received and actually achieved in a very long feminist battle recognition of rape and sexual assault as weapon of war that is forbidden. And 30 years later, we have to once again remind the world that this is the situation, in fact, that women's bodies are still the battlefield. The battle is on our bodies constantly. Women are being used as flesh, as a symbol, dehumanized in every possible way, not only by the horrific deeds that were done on October 7th, but also, and even more importantly so, for the people who did these horrific things, as a symbol of victory, as a symbol of possession, as a symbol of actually their dehumanization, which they do not recognize. This fight for the ownership of our own bodies goes on around the world for women, be it regarding sexual assault and rape and sexual harassment and pornography and prostitution and abortion and fertility rights. We are still fighting for being able to control and to make decisions for ourselves on our own bodies. The manifestation of that on October 7th is devastating for Israelis. It's devastating for Israeli women, and it certainly is devastating for those who paid with their lives, for those who are still in captivity, for those who are, we are fighting every day to bring back home and to do everything in our power to rehabilitate from the hell they're going through. So unfortunately, it's a very long way for women to be able to say we actually have equality, which will manifest by being the sole owners of our own bodies. But in these horrible, dark moments, we need to look back and see what a long way we already have done, at least to be able to be here and to fight for it. So thank you so very much for your partnership and for being here with us today, for saying those important things that we should make sure that become our reality and not only the fight that we are waging for so long.
Thank you very much. And, I would like to use this opportunity to say, you fought so much for women's rights over the years. And we want to thank you for everything you've done for women's rights in Israel and the world. And your work is so important. And I wish we would have less work, but now we have a lot of work ahead of us. And I hope you'll be a part of that. And thank you so much.
Have no doubt.
Thank you so much. Okay, and now we will go to Ms. Nastia Popandopoulos, I hope I said it correctly.
Correctly.
Ukrainian PR Army co-founder, podcaster, and media personality. Please, you have 3 minutes at yours.
Shalom. At the beginning of February, when Russians were just a few dozen kilometers away, Ukrainian soldiers stormed the house where I was staying. They checked the perimeter and looked like they had just come back from a battle. As they were leaving, one of them pointed at me and said, "You should cut your beautiful hair. When the Russians come, you'll be the first they notice and you'll be raped." We've seen it happen to girls like you. Russian soldiers done many things to Ukrainian women, using electroshockers to their genitalia, threatening with weapons to their husbands. "If you won't let me rape your woman, we'll kill you and your kids." Group rapes dozen soldiers, raping one woman in front of the eyes of her children. During therapeutic sessions, a lot of abused women don't remember what has happened to them. Their psycho literally denies to accept their horrible experiences. There are not so many testimonials who can talk about this. We don't have exact information from occupied territories. I can't even imagine which numbers we'll get after the occupation of our lands. Mariupol, for example. But we have Bucha, Irpin, Gostomel information, and it's horrible. We see how deep trauma is, and if there is no work on that, we see that it can lead to suicidal actions. Ukrainian women are not victims. After 2 years of full-scale invasion, we see the world paused the belief in us. Democratic values are put in danger. Talking and revealing the problems is the adult way to go through difficulties and solving them. Showing compassion genuinely helps us open our wounded heart. We stand with people who are in our shoes, you, going through the war, and I hope for your empathy towards us. This way, we can help each other, as friendship begins with a willingness to lend a hand. Women can stop wars because women give birth to children, not for war. I dream of having a child someday and plan to do so in my war-torn country. We call this way of living war-life balance. Has the incidence of gender-based violence, including domestic violence, changed during the war? According to a study by NGO La Strada, the number of cases decreased only in the first months of the war. Now the number is increasing. Domestic violence during wartime is more prevalent and dangerous than in peacetime. My roots track back to Greece. My ancestors fled war from Greece to Russia. Were deported from Russia to Kyrgyzstan. My father born there. As foreign agents, they were moved there. And after returning to their homeland, my father met my Ukrainian mother and moved to Donbass. I'm from Lugansk. My entire family had to leave their home again in 2014 when Russians came to us. And most of us now live in Kiev. Yet our lives are still under threat. I don't want all generations of my ancestors to keep fleeing, so I demand peace and justice. According to unofficial data, there are 28,000 of civilians in Russian captivity, Ukrainians. The President's Commissioner for Children's Rights, Daria Gerasimchuk, previously reported that as of the end of March, Ukrainian authorities knew of over 90,500 children taken from occupied territories to Russia, though exact numbers are hard to uncertain due to the ongoing occupation. Let us unite in solidarity, advocating for policies and practices that promote gender equality and protect women's rights. Together we can build a world where freedom, justice and democracy are not just ideals, but lived realities for everyone. Eventually, it is very inspiring for me to remember that Golda Meir, a remarkable leader, was born in Kiev, where I live. Her legacy serves as a powerful reminder of the impact that committed individuals can have on the fight for justice and national security. Let her story inspire us to continue our efforts to create a fair and equitable world for us. Toda.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for representing your people. You know, when I visited Rome and I spoke at the Senate there, we had the Ukrainian ambassador speak about what's happening there. And I was simply shocked by the numbers that were presented there and the different cases that occur there. And our hearts are with you. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for speaking on their behalf. Our hearts are with you, and you're so brave. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ukrainians stand with Israeli people.
Thank you. We will now go to Dr. Marcy Greenglass, a psychologist, a philanthropist, a co-founder and president of the board for Seed the Dream Foundation. I would like to also welcome your delegation and other women friends who are here. It's our honor to have you here, and please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. It is my honor, really, and I'm very overwhelmed by the power of testimony in this room. I'm having to catch my breath, each speaker, so thank you all for sharing. Thank you, Minister Tal Meron, for creating this platform, this international forum for this critical conversation. And I'm honored to be invited to speak here on behalf of the I Believe Israeli Women delegation that are here in Israel today. 7 months ago, the unimaginable happened. The horrific events of October 7th were and continue to be traumatic, yet the world reaction that followed has been nothing short of shocking and heartbreaking. We cannot and will not allow the systematic sexual violence of October 7th to be forgotten or denied. We must use our voices and our platforms to counter the dangerous denialism and disinformation that we are seeing from around the world. The silence of those who had claimed to be our friends, our allies, our partners, in calling for equal and humanitarian rights and for believing women was and continues to be deafening. It was in the face of this silence occurring on a global scale that our foundation, See the Dream, partnered with Jewish Women International, and the I Believe Israeli Women movement was born. Our delegation of over 25 women from across the United States has traveled here to Israel to bear witness to the atrocities of October 7th, to understand the current and future needs of the survivors, the witnesses, the families of all. It is our hope that this delegation will amplify our individual and collective voices to speak out against the sexual violence horrors of October 7th, the horrors that continue to be committed to this day, and form a global network for action. We are a unique group of women leaders representing a range of professions: lawyers, doctors, judges, entertainment executives, journalists, philanthropists, and professionals that work in gender-based violence and women-centered organizations. We represent many different circles of influence. Our delegation is action-oriented. We are here to learn and witness, but also, and most importantly, we are here to act. And though we are 25 women standing here, we represent thousands who have joined our movement and who are determined to ensure that Hamas's use of rape as a weapon of war is documented, addressed, and held to account. The world is tolerating crimes that would not be tolerated if any other group had been targeted. This is the definition of anti-Semitism at its core. I am the daughter of 2 survivors of the Holocaust. They witnessed firsthand the silence of their neighbors and the silence of the world. We are seeing it again, and we refuse to allow this silence to happen again. And so with our loud voices, we call for the release of the hostages. With our loud voices, we acknowledge and recognize that the UN now has a report that cites that conflict-related sexual violence occurred in multiple locations on October 7th. And with our loud voices, we are determined to call on leaders to demonstrate moral clarity, to define Hamas as a terror organization, and ensure that the unprecedented nature of the violence Hamas brought upon Israeli men, women, and children is unequivocally condemned. Each woman here with me today, in her own circle of influence, has a platform and is committed to standing in solidarity with Israeli women and men, and against the systematic violent atrocities committed by Hamas. We are calling on all concerned individuals, women and men, to join us, to raise our voices, to amplify and to disseminate the truth, and to call for justice and accountability. There is no context for sexual violence. There is no excuse. There is no use of the word but. The condemnation must be unequivocal. We believe, we know, and we will not be silent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I must say, I agree with each and every word. It was so accurate. And you spoke, it feels like you spoke out of my heart. So thank you so much for your words. Thank you for your delegation. We're so honored to have you guys here. And I'm sure we'll do wonderful things together. And I'm looking forward to meeting you guys afterwards. And thank you so much again. Our next speaker is also a friend. Ayelet Razin, who is the member of the Dina project, and also she's the former director of the Authority for Equal Rights for Women, and we've been working together for a while, and I truly appreciate your work and everything that you've done so far, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I also have the privilege of being the head of the delegation, the Israeli head of the delegation that Marcy is leading. First of all, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry. still very,
It was
very rattled from your,
it was
from your
emotional.
words, Marcy. Thank you. Again, sorry. Thank you, Shelley, for your partnership and for your friendship and for all you're doing today, but not only. This is one peak, but during all this time. And thank you all for being here. In the face of the most violent and widespread sexual assaults in recent history, a silencing and gaslighting industry thrives, run by organizations whose motto is women's protection and human rights. This group was not content in simply overlooking the disaster, but rather actively works to question the facts. I would like to focus on the evidence and indications to the sexualized torture and murder committed on October 7th and during the war. Testimonies of survivors. More and more men and women are reaching out, seeking therapy and medical treatment, identifying themselves as survivors of sexual crimes committed on October 7th, or as they were held in captivity. Some have found the strength and courage to come forward and testify about what was done to them: rape, sexualized torture, and sexualized inhumane and degrading treatment, just like we heard before. Testimonies of eyewitnesses. At least 10 survivors of the Nova Party massacre reported witnessing rapes and gang rapes. All the victims they testified about were murdered during or after these acts. There are further indications to rape or other forms of abuse in the army bases. And the hostages. Some testified in regard to themselves, some in regard to things that they witnessed and were told about on ongoing sexual abuse, everyday sexual abuse. First responders. There are numerous testimonies that show bodies that bodies that were bruised, fully or partially undressed, indicating sexual violence and mutilation. Footage, again, endless materials of all sorts from different scenes indicate a pattern of victims, mostly women, found fully or partially naked with blood in their genitalia area. And medical and mental health officials that testify that they handle either bodies or were approached by survivors provided additional evidence to the puzzle that we're building to understand the narrative of what happened in this regard during the October 7th massacre and attack. Two things are especially important for me to stress. One, the pattern. The pattern, I'm saying this as a criminal lawyer, the pattern indicates premeditation. This is what they came to do. When you see the same kind of scene, same kind of fingerprints in 3 or 4 different main areas of the attack, you understand that it's not some especially cruel unit or terrorist that, did these horrible things. You see the same positioning of bodies, the same indications of mutilation, and you understand how premeditated this was. Secondly, and most importantly at this time, these things are still going on as long as we have women and men still in captive. And we have to do all in our power, Israeli government, but also this joint effort, international effort, to demand the immediate release of them safely and as soon as possible. In the face of this terror, silence is complicity, and we cannot be quiet. This threatens to undo decades of progress and achievements. This is not a betrayal to Israeli women. It is a betrayal to humanity. Thank you again for all that you're doing, all of you that are here, and let us pray for the safe and quick return of the hostages.
Thank you so much, Ayelet.
I would like now to give the floor to MP Nike Grupponi from the Italian Parliament.
Thank you so much.
Please.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to say thank you for all, and it's very important to speak about the truth and transfer outside. So it's my honor to fight with you. Thank you so much. This is not my first time to visit Israel. I have never missed an appointment in Jerusalem. Here one learns history. In the School of Life, I would like to have women from all over the world as my classmates, especially those who, by profession or age, are attending universities. Places where anti-Semitism, the longest hatred, is still infecting the minds and hearts of the young through deceit. Hatred that continues to blind entire generations. Despite our own will of never again, an ecumenical oath not kept, betrayed on October 7, 2023, when Palestinian Islamic terrorists attacked the collective Jew, the state of Israel. Yet it happened again. Once more we have seen images reminiscent of Nazi Germany and Europe, raised in the culture of hate and death, hatred of Jews, but also of their own children, who are taught to kill, rape, and die in the name of God. And this time, we cannot allow the world to forget what's happened, nor let our international institutions hide the evidence and hinder the effort to achieve justice. It's crucial to insist on documenting these crimes against humanity. The magnitude of the shock caused by these attacks has been exacerbated, but the confused reaction of the world, particularly by human rights and the women's organization. These organizations have primarily focused their attention on the impact of the war on Gazan residents, almost entirely overlooking the crimes committed against Israeli women and children, which sparked a conflict. This has generated a profound sense of betrayal among the Jewish people. Yet, even in the face of evidence, many continue to ignore the war crimes committed by Hamas. I would like to visit the front lines with the protesting students from the universities, where, to the first time since the war of independence, Israeli women are engaged in front line combat against the enemy. Because this is not only war against the attempt to deny the Jewish people their rightful homeland, or against the regional Iranian axis seeks to defeat, trample and destroy the Strait of Israel. This is also a war against the very essence of violence, against the armed of the Islam embodiment of the fear and the hatred the church ensure men have harbored toward girls and women from time immemorial. I would like the woman and the young female, all the people, all the students at the university to be taught to fight these battles, to the thought to identify the true enemy, those who deceive them, those who threaten their free existence, monsters that you will not find here in the state in Israel. Here you will encounter free women who fight to defend you, armed with freedom and emancipation. Here you will also find us, including me, because I will always be an holy of state of Israel. I say this as a parliamentarian, as a woman, as a mother, as a true friend of the Jewish people. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nike. I would like now to give the floor to our last speaker. So Emma Pican from the UK, Director of Labour Against Anti-Semitism.
Hello, and thank you to MK Maron and Elnet. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here amongst such powerful company. I'm honoured to be with you all and to talk about fighting against anti-Semitism, fighting for Israel, and against gender-based violence. And I've just lost my speech, sorry. 1 second. I was part of a campaigning group. Well, I am. Labour Against Anti-Semitism is a campaigning activist group that was born during the time in the UK when the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn brought about a big awareness for people like me, a non-Jew, and Jews alike, that there was a huge problem of anti-Semitism in the left. And Jeremy Corbyn and his fellow travellers had to be stopped. We fought hard to stop him and fought hard for the values of the left, which during my lifetime had always meant fighting racism, not sharing a party with racists. There was a deep need for people in the left, in the political left, to combat the anti-Semitism within their own tribe and not just point their fingers at the far right. So the roots of this situation in the UK stem from Soviet anti-Semitism merging with Islamist anti-Semitism, becoming mainstreamed and repeated over and over via our social media feeds, and finding a platform in the left, not only in politics, but in our universities, schools, workplaces, and finally now onto our streets. So it remains urgent work, if not even more urgent in today's climate. I also want to talk to you today about hope, which is hard right now, and about fear, my own fear. The devastation of October the 7th, a horror visited on Israel with a brutality that for once it pierced even the consciousness of the anti-Israel left in the UK, was so horrific, so unimaginable, the shocking violence with scenes that should have ended all discussion about the nature of Hamas and why they, like ISIS, needed to have any capacity to govern or bear arms permanently removed by force. Sadly, in my country, it did not. In the UK and globally around the West, we instead saw grotesque celebrations on that very day, October the 7th, and an explosion in anti-Semitic hate speech that we'd not seen since our records began. As week after week in London, my capital city and my home previously for 30 years, vicious anti-Semites were given free rein to spew hatred, anti-Semitic slogans and chanting for the destruction of Israel. I saw the familiar drumbeat of hatred people like me had fought so hard against during the dark times of Jeremy Corbyn. And adding to this shocking situation came the slow, well not that slow, drifting away of support, staunch at first from our parliament, as some of our parliamentarians became worried about the votes they were going to get, and they became louder in their cowardice. Instead of leading, they became led by a mob, and instead of standing up for our values, they weakened. The corrosion of the courage in the left was mirrored by the collapse of courage in our feminist groups. The abandonment of Israeli and Jewish women who were subjected to the worst kind of sexual depravity impacts us all. It centres Jewish and Israeli women as liars, or worse, deserving of sexual abuse. The fact that women's organisations globally refused to speak out on the graphic images we saw and the testimony we heard makes a mockery of the idea of the sisterhood and the throwaway phrase of believe all women. If all women does not include Jewish and Israeli women, if sisterhood is not inclusive of them, then as feminists, we have a big problem. How can a Jewish woman who is a victim of domestic violence or sexual abuse seek support from women's organisations who have ignored and denied what went on October the 7th and continues, and those women that have been continued to be held hostage? We must raise our global voices to highlight the impact this has had on women and how it threatens our very safety. Sexual violence can never be justified. Rape is not resistance, nor is it political. As feminists, as women, for our sisters and for our daughters, we cannot and must not be silent. So how can I talk of hope? Well, this week I have, through the amazing people in Elnet, been given an opportunity to meet fellow women around the world as appalled by this situation as I am, and determined to speak out. Speak out wherever we will be heard. Speak out even if it risks our safety. The use of violence as a political weapon of war is something that all women should speak out against. We are half the global population, and if we work together as we should. Our voices cannot be ignored, because your fight is our fight. Just as you were, I've lost that bit. Okay. Because your fight is our fight. Just as you are closer to the front line in Israel than we are, your women's suffering was not ignored. And together with those of us in organisations like mine, we know the difference between right and wrong. They can see through, organisations like mine can see through the wall of hatred or cowardice that mutes our parliamentarians, and women like us will not be silent. My fear is how weak some of our parliamentarians will get before they understand that what is at stake in Israel is a risk to us all. Those of us that share the values of democracy, of freedom, of equality, should not be bowing to anyone who does not share those values, not only doesn't share those values, but will commit grotesque acts of violence against women whilst trying to destroy those values. Your fight is our fight, and many people in the UK understand this. And that is my hope, that our parliamentarians don't lose their voices over this. My fear is that they will. I'd like to thank Elnet for this amazing opportunity, and also for Joan Ryan, the leader of Elnet in the UK, for being an inspiration on doing the right thing, the reason why both of us, as non-Jews, dedicate ourselves to this battle.
Thank you very much. What an ending to this convention. Every word. We appreciate it, and thank you so much for your support and your belief and your work. We truly appreciate it. So we've come to the end of this convention. You know, I have so much to say because this was truly inspiring. But I promise you, this is only the first step. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and I intend, together with Elnet, of course, to work together to invite, and I call on every country on the globe to join us with this coalition, to work for women's rights, to work on recognizing sexual assault as war crimes, to releasing hostages, our hostages, and hostages around the world. I'm sure that we will act with legislations in different parliaments. We plan on having another convention in Paris within a few months. By then, my prayer is that our hostages are back home much before that, and we'll be concentrating on their rehabilitation. That is our biggest hope in life right now. I want to thank everyone who attended this assembly, our guests, the parliament members, ambassadors, speakers, guests, everyone. Thank you so much for making the effort to come here, for recognizing that we must take care of this issue, for recognizing the difference between good and evil, because it's as simple as that. And thank you, Elnet, for all of your work. Thank you for the delegation who came here through Martha, and thank you for the American delegation. And truly, from the bottoms of our hearts, I want to thank you for everything. We plan on doing a lot of things. Don't worry, we will let you know, and we will cooperate together. And I want to thank member of Knesset Dalal for joining us. He's sorry that he joined only now, and all the other MKs who were here and did not have a chance to speak. And I want to invite you all to come upstairs to the Knesset Square. It's on the 4th floor, and we'll take some pictures with the background of the Knesset. I think it's so important because this is the first step of this coalition. Now, everybody here, go back to your countries and tell them to join the coalition. That's the most important thing. Thank you so much. Okay.